This is the 8-9 Combo Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones.
This is the 8-9 Combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. And, mate, we are on a countdown to Bledisloe 1 in Sydney. How are you going?
Oh, well, first of all, how's it? I just woke up 3 minutes ago because I had the wrong day.
Yeah.
But here I am. How's it, man? I'm really excited about it. First of all, I'm going to meet you in the flesh. And we're going to visit some flesh pots and eat some flesh at Bastardos in Surrey Hills. So everyone, shout out to the bastard and join us if you want.
Yeah, no, what could possibly go wrong is I am genuinely looking forward to it though, and we will come back to this, I'm quite sure. It's episode 32 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast, and we're brought to you through the Rugby Championship by Chasing the Sun 2, the outstanding 5-part all-access series documenting the Boks memorable 2023 Rugby World Cup journey, and which is now available to watch on RugbyPass TV World.
It is actually now available.
It is actually available now. Just head to rugbypass.tv and sign up for free and watch it wherever you are in the world, bar South Africa, we've discovered. So yes, but you will see it there. Let's get into the rugby week, mate. And it's cheers and jeers from the weekend. And my cheers for you is very simple, and you're going to love this. Tane Edmed is going absolute great guns for North Harbour. Starred in their big win over Manawatu. 2 tries, 33 points, 10 from 10 from the tee. Try, assist, line breaks, tackle breaks. Just going great guns at the moment.
He's been, he thought he was going to Tuaranga, but then he took a left turn and went to the harbour. The man cannot stop creating try assists. I mean, if you watched him all season and if you watched him intelligently during the Super Rugby, it's very difficult to see how someone plays well in a bad team versus how someone plays okay in a good team. He's just a man. He's courageous. He's bold. He takes on the line. He's really got a good attitude. And I know you know this, his kicking percentage is quite high. If you take over, people remember one kick he missed, but over the long season, the guy has a good boot.
He goes all right. He goes all right. And, you know, it's hard to argue with form. That's certainly true. So, anyway, we will see.
I saw traits in him. Obviously, I was ridiculed for so long about it, and now everyone's Johnny come lately.
You were taking the piss.
No, it wasn't. No, I knew that I wasn't in the Overton window yet, so I had to sound like I was taking the piss, but I actually thought he was good. So I do think he's coachable. That's one of the things. I think Joe Schmidt requires people who are coachable because he has a system. He has these kind of Schmitty kind of things he wants to do, and it takes a while. Johnny Sexton wasn't Johnny Sexton before he was Johnny Sexton. And I've always said this, Australians wouldn't pick Andre Pollard for their fly-off. They would keep picking other shiny objects and keep losing.
Yep, it's quite possibly true. It's quite possibly true.
Am I jeering?
You are jeering.
My jeer is for the people
Is your jeers to my email that said we're recording Tuesday morning?
No, that's okay. I'm not going to jeer a famous Kiwi's fascination with Star Wars. Just like I wouldn't jeer your love of Seinfeld or my love of Sopranos. That's just like pop culture. I'm going to jeer today the weird lame-brained attempt by the English to horn in on the success of the Urk, the mighty Urk, and say, couldn't we come to the party, but first can you kick out the 2 new boys? And I thought the Irish were really stout and said, nah, we're in the position of strength, and we'd like to tell our former colonial overlords and pillagers, get out.
It was even better than that, wasn't it? It was sort of like, can you come to our party but not bring those 2? Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. It's got a little bit to go as yet, no doubt at all. But it's a good G's. I do like that. I do like that we've got another favourite guest returning, mate, and it's for another 8-9 debut, and he joins us next. I'm looking forward to this.
He wants brownie points.
Here he comes.
Dun, 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 dun. Do, 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 do.
From the moment he remembered brownies in the oven 2 years ago, this week's guest has been one of our genuine favourites. He's now burning the early mornings at the helm of SENZ Breakfast with former All Black Israel Dag, but the voice remains at its unforgettable best on TVNZ as well. It's quite possibly and quite probably past his bedtime, but this is the sacrifices that we do in Bledisloe Cup week. So please bring the oven mitts together for Scotty Sumo Stevenson.
Well, hello. Yeah. See, this is why I've worn head protection tonight for you, Harry, because I knew you were coming at me.
The most polarizing figure in rugby today.
All right.
Man, what are you talking about?
Let's get it out with. Come on, then. Let's get it out with.
You replaced Ben Smith as the most hated Kiwi on the planet. What are you talking about? Rassie and his pot.
Hey, you're Rassie. Ik kan niet jij verstaan nie, man. I am telling you now. That was a real beat up. Considering you just mentioned Ben Smith, I mean, it was their site, wasn't it? It did a write-off of the story with a sensational headline. Nothing to see here. Here's a question for you, Harry. If I had replaced the two villains I chose in the spur of the moment in an off-the-cuff radio piece with Gargamel and Scar from the Lion King, do you think anyone would have cared? No. And I'm going to be honest with you right now. I don't read this stuff. I don't read the comments. I mean, I've certainly seen some of the feedback from the Rassie Erasmus acolytes out there, and I can tell you right now that feedback says more about them than my comments said about me. I can assure you of that. There have been no holds barred in the social media onslaught, apparently, because I don't read it, but just some people have shown me. My kids are Mongols. I must not go back to South Africa because I'll be killed. I mean, get a grip, people. Rassie Erasmus is a public figure, and our job is to lampoon these people. I just sat on a stage 2 nights ago with 3 men who between them have won 5 World Cups, and we are laughing at each other. I know what Rassie has done. I know he's the South African god, but he's not mine. He is a cult leader in South Africa. I'm aware of that. He is a fantastic rugby coach. He's the most innovative coach in the world right now. He is 3 steps ahead of everyone else, but he's not above having the borax poked at him once in a while. Calm down, people. Calm down.
First of all, much of what you just said about, I don't know, your kids and all that stuff and getting killed, that's what we say before breakfast in South Africa. That's literally pleasantries. I don't think Rassie cared at all about your Jabba the Hutt reference.
Harry, I'm half South African. Do you think I don't understand the culture? I'm with you on this.
They just want to give it back as well. It's like, now you're the pantomime villain.
But just be a little bit smarter than we're going to mur you and your kids are Mongols. I mean, that's all I would.
Mur is hug, Sumo. It's like love.
Hard. It's like this nasty, man.
But why did you pick? But why pick Jabba the Hutt? It was such a reach back.
because you see, like, it's the scene. I'm trying to paint a metaphorical image of Rassie sitting back. You know what he's like? He's got Princess Leia on the chain. And it's like he's got the media on the chain over there because no one questions him in the South African media because he's their god. And he's got everyone on the chain, and whatever he says is gospel. And that is exactly the scene from that Star Wars film. And that is my reference. Anyway, we're just creating another bullshit headline.
Did you just ride a motorcycle? Did you just ride a motorcycle into a wall? Why do you have that on?
No, listen, because I knew you were coming at me, so I wanted to wear some head protection.
There was that movie about a Kiwi who rode a motorcycle really fast.
Yeah, the world's fastest Indian. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that your
champion
dad?
Oh. The one lesson that he taught me, and I don't ride bikes often, Harry. He did teach me to piss on a lemon tree. Very good for your lemons to take a leak on your lemon tree.
Really? And that's why they're yellow around the world. I had no idea. Thought they were green. Yeah, before that.
Kiwis, we're ahead of our time. What we're not ahead of is Rassie Erasmus, and no one is. I'll give you a story, boys. I was with a very respected coach over the weekend. having a chat. And he said this to me point blank. He said, Rassie Erasmus, and, you know, in all seriousness, a little bit of fun on a radio station taken out of context by a couple of websites who want to make a headline. That's fine. That's the world we live in, right? But we pay due homage to Rassie Erasmus and his innovative coaching style. He is the innovator in the game right now. We used to think in New Zealand that our rugby coaches were the innovators. They're not anymore. He is streets ahead of everyone else. And I tell you what, the reason he's got Tony Brown is because he's operating 4 moves ahead of everyone else. He knows that Tony Brown is the greatest strike play architect in the game right now. What are they going to do? They're going to remove scrum resets. They're going to replace them with free kicks. What do you need from free kicks? Great strike plays, great counter-attack, great transition. Yeah. That's Tony Brown's strength. Rassie is thinking a year, 2 years down the track, and everyone else is being challenged to keep up with him. And I swear to God, Tony Brown in that team right now has got a book of strike plays from free kicks, from scrums that are not going to be reset, that are going to be given a free kick. Australia, the architects of that particular law change too, I think, Brett, Australia, New Zealand.
Right.
And he's going to own them on that too. That just shows you what a genius that guy is. A genius, yes. A cartoon villain also.
Ironically, it was one of the original Stellenbosch rules. But yes, it's kind of our doing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Can I take this off now?
Yeah, I was going to say, are you going to take that off? It
are
looks
you sweating?
It looks like it has. It looks like it has fit you better, I must say.
Yeah, I know. To be honest with you, it's a tight helmet. It's not even mine. I just borrowed it for the night. I put my cap on.
Yeah, I love my handsome now. But listen, I was listening to you as I usually do, off and on, and you actually were extolling Rassie on a couple of things that I thought were interesting. One was you were saying he gave the bench an identity, not just having a name, Bomb Squad, but actually branded them, trademarked them, built a charisma around them, and made people excited to be part of that league. Almost like, oh, you're starting? Oh, sorry. You know, it's that, and that role and the timing of it. And the fact that it's not just dribs and drabs, like, oh, you're a little bit down, so come in. You've got 5 guys coming on at the same time. Something awe-inspiring. Yeah.
Like, and Harry, and I don't know if Rassie coined that phrase or not, but he certainly owned it, right? And he's made the most of that. And this is the one thing we've had a lot of debate over here, and certainly on our radio show on SENZ. When an All Black is put on the bench, it's considered a demotion. Every headline will say, drop to the bench. Yeah. Demoted to the bench. It's been given a demotion.
The word benched as a verb.
Right? Yeah. You're right. And so instead of looking the game as a 23-man game, as Rassie has done now for many years, we are still attached to this notion of either you're a starter or you're not good enough. Well, tell that to Malcolm Marx. Do you think Malcolm Marx cares? Malcolm Marx is probably the most influential Springbok forward in the game, apart from Quacker Smith. But he's there because he's a leader of men. And Malcolm Marx sits on that bench, and I think Malcolm Marx would probably consider himself the captain of the Bomber squad. I don't know if he does or not, but I certainly would. I look at him, he's talismanic. Are you gonna tell me that Malcolm Marx isn't a guy you fear in a game of footy? And he is sitting there for what, 45, 50 minutes, and as an opposition player that Malcolm Marx is about to enter the fray. I know in the back of my head, if I'm one of those forwards, I'm going, fuck, this is shit. This is the worst assignment ever in history. I gotta deal with this guy.
Yeah, you drew a really good contrast of Asafa Omoa and the idea of thinking of him as like, oh no, he has to come on. He has only 2 throws, he botches them, and he's off again. And this kind of feeling of never did Razor trust some of these bench guys, Sam Darry, Asua Famoa, like Luke Jacobson. Like, then they just come on for cameos. What's the point? Or like Sam Darry didn't even get on.
Yeah, but if you looked at New Zealand heading into that 2015 World Cup, the most intuitive coach in world rugby when it came to substitutions was Steve Hansen. Yes. And I'll give you an example of that, and that was Sonny Bill Williams on for Conrad Smith very early in the second half of that World Cup final against Australia in 2015. Conrad's never forgiven Steve Hansen for replacing him. But Steve Hansen saw something in the game. It wasn't based on GPS numbers. It wasn't based on some stats he was being handed. Steve Hansen just quietly sent a message down to the bench saying, "I'm seeing something, and I think we need to get Sonny Bill in the game." And that was it. So that intuition around employing your bench and deploying your bench, which I think is a better phrase, deploying the bench at the right time, that's got to be part of being an international coach these days. It's a 23-man game, Test match rugby. There's 23 guys out there who put on jerseys and run out on the field. Yes, 8 of them sit down, but they're still going to be involved in the game.
If Steve Hansen was in Star Wars, what character would he be?
Oh, it'd be Vader.
Oh, that'd be so great.
and then when he met Ian Foster, he'd say, "I'm your father."
Yeah.
No, look, he's definitely Vader. He's my
when
Vader.
When was the last time a tight 5 forward on the bench didn't get on into a Test match?
No, I can't recall actually, Brett. You know,
it'd be a long time.
It happens now, right? And you know that you're gonna gash yourself. Although what was really interesting in that Cape Town test was how long they left their forwards on. So not only did we question the tactics in the first test, then it was almost like, oh, now we're gun shy of using the bench at all. And you're sort of thinking to yourself, oh my God, this is the thing that people say about Rassie and obviously the chant that goes around in your head. And you think, how's Cody Taylor, who's probably having the greatest season of his All Black life, but I'm looking there at about 65, 70 minutes going, really? Holy shit, the guy must be gassed. What's going on?
Tyler Lomax's card came in the 73rd minute.
Yeah, and it does affect them, obviously. It affects them on even things like lifting in the lineouts. I mean, it's just a question of attrition. You're on for 75 minutes and you're lifting 120 kg human. It's sometimes you don't lift as well. What's going on in the coaching box? I see, like you've kind of alluded to, in the Springbok coaching box, it's like a big party in there. It's a bar. I mean, Rassie punching Tony Brown, taking off his hat, putting him in a headlock. In the New Zealand coaching box, it's all very austere. They're all in, white shirts with black ties and black blazers. Razor is sort of deep into his thoughts. No one approaches him. No one touches him. There's no one around him. There's no jocularity. What's going on in there?
Nerves, I think, Harry, to be honest with you. And Brett, I think these guys are trying desperately to instill in the team their own methodology, their own game plan. They're not quite sure. Well, if they weren't sure of it beforehand, they're sure of it now. She's a different ball game, isn't it? Coaching internationally after Super Rugby. You got the pressure of the nation, and you're right. I don't think the black blazers and black ties do them any favors. I mean, you're pinned down like someone from Mad Men. It's like, stop.
After a while, you're angry at your collar too. You're like, no.
Just take that off, they're finding their feet. There's no doubt about that. That they have been afforded an awful lot of rope by New Zealand standards over here, and by the rugby fraternity in particular. I mean, there are some people who are sort of sitting there thinking, oh, well, this is hubris, isn't it? Old break dancer, and, he's got what he deserves, and how dare they treat Ian Foster like that, and this is what you get, and the grass isn't always greener, and all of those same arguments. I do think it will click, and I do not think it's necessarily just a coaching issue for New Zealand right now. I think it's a playing issue. I think it's a playing style issue. I think it's a type of player issue. And Harry, before you joined us tonight, we were just having an aside, Brett and I. If I look through that Springbok squad right now, I could name you 10, 12 players who, to me, are superstars of the international game. Superstars, genuinely. And if I look through Australia and New Zealand right now, I think the game here is struggling for out-and-out superstars. I really think it is. The NBA has superstars. The NFL has superstars. The NHL has superstars. The EPL has superstars. What has Super Rugby got right now? Who are the out-and-out global superstars of Super Rugby that just automatically spring to mind?
We've got a lucky losers finals format.
Oh, my God.
You also, you look at maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you think a World 15, a World 23, it would be 90% Super Rugby. And it's not that Springboks left and therefore became different players. These are the same players that played, 6, 7 years ago. It's that something has changed in Ireland, something has changed in the North. And so being exposed to those, even in Champions Cups or in the IRC, has really lifted Springbok standards. And they've done another thing that Razor hasn't done. By the way, Razor reminds me of Dexter, the serial killer guy on TV. That's my reference. He's like bizarre. His syntax is weird. His
just
timing
wait how
is weird.
no New Zealand fan argues with you or threatens to kill your children.
Come on, come at me, bro.
That's called a sense of humor for those just trying to.
But like you look at it, and it's interesting because the Springboks have chosen to take IP from around the world. They have their better rested Japanese bass players, Kwacha, Peter Steff, Malcolm Marx, Jesse Creel, who look, really in the best shape of their career. Then you have sort of the deviousness of the Irish, and so Archie's over there plotting in Leinster. And then you have people in France, people in England. And New Zealand has said, no, we want to be this island nation, 2-island nation. We want to be right here. Don't bother us with the stuff in the rest of the world. Is that going wrong for them, or should they embrace overseas players?
Yeah, I've long said it. And I think the starting point with that, and I mooted this idea many years ago, at the very least, if you're playing Super Rugby, you should be able to play for any club in Super Rugby.
Yes.
That's how you spread talent. That's how you grow games. That's how you grow competitions. Instead, this protectionist policy that New Zealand has relied on for a long period of time, it worked for a time. It did. And so I don't question that it served a purpose, but it's no longer fit for purpose. And the South Africans have shown that. It's no surprise to me that since South Africa changed its eligibility restrictions and started to say, play your rugby wherever you like, let some private owner pick up your wage tab so we can save money and throw our resource into our top team. When you come together, they have won 2 Rugby World Cups. I mean,
look at Argentina. Argentina's not even in a comp.
With the results, can you?
Yeah.
And so we're a result-led business. International rugby is about results. South Africa want to be the most dominant team in the world. They are the world number ones. They are the world champions. And their players come from all corners. Now, originally that was dressed up as a kind of economic reality for South African rugby, but now it should just be considered smart business. And New Zealand will change. I have no doubt about that. And the reason I say it will change is this. New Zealand Rugby now has private equity invested in it, and they haven't invested in the grassroots game. There is no altruism at all from a private equity investor. They have invested in the All Blacks brand. I heard one former All Black just 3 days ago say to me, we might just have to get used to not having an 85% win record. That's one of the most famous All Blacks of all time said that to me. And I said, well, you can't do that. You just sold 7.5% of your revenue every year to a private equity partner based on the fact that you are the most dominant rugby team in the world. That's actually a non-negotiable. So if the All Blacks say you're
hold the receipt up, aren't they?
Right, and if that's what you've bought, then that's what they will demand. That's like Coke saying, we don't care anymore about the recipe. We'll just throw any old thing in a can and hope for the best. No. Yeah.
No. That was really good, by the way. That right there was
herbs and spices, my friends. You don't go in there with 10.
Yeah. I feel like I just realized you're much smarter than I thought you were right then at that moment. That metaphor was genius.
I really appreciate it.
I think I'm offended for you, Sumo.
No.
He shed the skin of the clown, and we saw the little mini genius come out.
They're sort of having their cake and eating it though, New Zealand, and certainly the top All Black players. They are lining up to have their 6 months in Japan. They're lining up now to have 6 months in France or 6 months in Ireland or wherever it is. So it's kind of happening anyway, and it's
stealth, Brett. It's happening by stealth.
It's not even by stealth. It's happening clear and day. They announce it.
I know. So you got the Beauden Barrett clause is a prime example, right? Or Bodie Barrett gets to go and have a sabbatical here in Japan, and then come back and be in the Blues. And then Bodie Barrett thinks, well, like I'm an All Black because I'm getting paid as an All Black and I'm a contracted All Black. So, I should be a starting All Black. And we dress it up all the time. It's like, what about X? And what about this guy who committed here? And what about this? It's like, who gives a shit? It's international rugby. The best 23 players who are eligible to play for your team should play for your team. And there's all this gnashing of teeth and wailing about the community game. The community game's gone. I mean, the union's looking at school kids now as their funnel of talent. They're not looking at clubs. They're not looking at provinces. I can assure you of that. They want kids stipended at 15 into a Super Rugby academy, into a Super Rugby club, and then providing their talent. Why are we pretending that we care about the greater good of the game? If the All Blacks is your brand and that is what you sell, pick the best players. And as someone said the other day, the All Blacks' best players right now in certain positions who are eligible to play for the All Blacks and by passport alone, would you pick them? 100% you would. If you could. And Scott Robertson would. And one of the first things he said when he was appointed to the job was exactly this.
Right.
Yeah, we need to get this option open.
Yeah. There might be a test case looming about Super Rugby, and I'm with you on this whole open borders thing. I think I've said it for probably as long as you have it. It needs to be. But there's a test case looming there because Pone Fa'amausili has either signed for Moana Pacifica or is about to. And if he can regain his fitness and becomes the devastating ball carrier that we know he can be, he is going to be one of the top 3 Australian tight heads in Super Rugby.
Correct.
And so come July next year, or at the very worst, August, September next year, Joe Schmidt or whoever is the Wallabies coach at the time is going to go, why can't I pick that bloke again?
Brett, we like what our Super Rugby news over the weekend was on a contrived finals format to suit an 11-team competition, while the NRL, if we can bring it to an Australian context, played out the first round of finals footy.
Yeah.
And it was an extraordinary round of finals footy. 2 games went to type. We knew they would, Penrith and the Storm, and the others. And that Manly Bulldogs game to finish the round was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And that is where the NRL, and I dare say the AFL too.
Sydney Swans.
Yeah, you can be a Swans man all you like. Good stuff. What about Brisbane's comeback on the weekend?
He's going to try to be this weekend.
I've got a City Swans hoodie.
What I'm saying is that, they're not hamstrung by international commitments and people sitting back saying, you got to commit to the country to play. The best players are picked up by the best teams, and the best teams rise to the top, and you have a compelling competition. And that is what the NRL is. And Super Rugby, look, I went on the site today, Brett, and I know this will be a bugbear of yours as a journalist, and it's certainly of mine. I went on the site today. Do you know what I saw on the Super Rugby website today?
Nothing.
Still 12 teams. Still 12 teams.
The Rebels will never die.
Still the finals. Yeah, the Rebels will never die. Still the finals format from last year, unless you searched news and looked at the one little story that they posted up about the new finals format. Like, when are they going to update that? Isn't this competition alive? It's alive for 12 months of a year, not 4 months of a year. And the website doesn't even get updated to fit the news that they're selling people. And you think to yourself,
Listen, the IT is being run
by 8-year-olds
RTD
doing this 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go on any other professional club competition in the world today, and I can find you who farted before breakfast.
Yeah.
And the Super Rugby website can't even take off the logo of a team that no longer exists. I mean, what are we dealing? Why are we? And we're talking about a game right now that actually doesn't know how to be grown up and professional. And we're wasting our time, and we're 40 minutes into this talking about a sport that doesn't take itself seriously as a professional sport. Why are we wasting our time on it?
Yeah.
Ask yourself.
All I know is I'm going to invent a fart index, and I'm going to publish this. And every week I'm going to have the leaders of the fartiest looking players.
Who farted the earliest each day.
It's a massive party looking.
It's a good idea. It's easy. Like the NRL has the benefit of being they are the EPL, they are the NBA, they are the best competition in that particular sport.
I know.
Super Rugby definitely is not.
Well, no, but
not.
you could at least pretend that you were trying to be.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean? Just pretend you're trying to be. Maybe give the fans a little bit more respect than you do, and maybe keep us updated. Mate, where is the off-season moves? Where is the page updating squads? Where is the interviews with the coaches off-season, the players off-season? Where is my up-to-date source? You know, I was sitting there hosting a radio show last week, and I looked up at a TV screen, and we've got about 20 of them in the studio. And ESPN were running a massive studio production. Do you know what their studio production was about? 6 weeks until opening night of the NBA. Now, I know, you know, welcome to the Ocho and the Octo Box and all that jazz, but they were running a 3-hour special because it was
a countdown clock.
Weeks until the opening night of the NBA.
Yeah.
You know, there is just a different level of professionalism and approach to the game, information for the fans, the ecosystem around it, pumping up the tires of the players, talking about squads, acquisitions, guys who are leaving, everything that a sports league should have. You know, Super Rugby is a 5-month of the year deal, if that. The NFL, mate, if there were 13 months in a year, it would fill 13 months.
They would lobby for a 14.
100%.
And even on the stats issue, like you take the ERC and you go on the ERC site, they have wonderful stats. They have stats, crossways, verticals, player rankings per position. They have deep stats on, you know, penalties won and conceded a scrum for a player, like interesting stuff. So that sports nerds can crawl in.
That will be the case again in October, November, when our teams go north, and the Six Nations Inc. owns the Autumn Nations series, whatever they call it now, the spring tour, and the stats presentation on their website is good, phenomenal.
It's so good, and it's the same every year, so you can go back and say, I want to look at something from 8 years ago.
How's that changed from last year?
SENZ are, it's like they have a different stat every time, and they just like leave one off. It's only yellow cards, not red cards for some reason. I don't know why. Just weird stuff.
Sanitize the game. You know, the great thing about that is that the Autumn International is owned by Six Nations. You could probably go through the companies CVC owns, and you'll find out the company doing their stats is also owned by CVC. So they're rinsing money out of the game that way too, which is perfect.
Quite likely. Quite likely.
So what we do have, so if our club scene is sometimes very gloomy in Super Rugby, the test rugby, international test rugby is the thing, right? It's the thing that NRL can never compete with. It's why Aussies will watch a game, Calcutta Cup. Aussies will get up and watch Ireland versus the Box because it's interesting. It catches our imagination. So as we kind of head now into Bledisloe, I was thinking about how similarities abound here. Yeah, both teams are 4-3. Both are led by Kiwis that are a little bit strange personalities compared to other head coaches. There's like one win against Argentina that's okay, and one that's a loss that's terrible. Both dropped both to the Box, and then he kind of ran up the score a little bit on the Northern Hemisphere. They're entering though, and it's almost like there's no pressure at all on Joe. Whereas I think the Rays are starting to eat a little pressure for breakfast. Is that true? Is that fair?
I was gonna ask about the honeymoon period. What's it been like?
By and large, probably far more forgiving than it used to be, Brett. Razor's built up a fair amount of political capital in that respect, though, based on his history and based on the fact that he was probably seen as anti-establishment. And the vote for Razor was a vote for change. And I guess those who really wanted to see something different from the All Blacks, not just on the field, by the way, but just a different approach to the people and the fans and the media and all that jazz. You know, they're quite able to sit back and relax. I know that there's some really dyed-in-the-wool guys who've been connected with that team for a long time who have given them a long leash, as I mentioned earlier on. There are some fans who haven't, naturally. I mean, that's the spectrum of these things, right? And there are some fans who say, well, you know, this guy was supposed to be the game changer and, you know, it's custard so far. Losing twice to the Springboks by 4 and 6 points, I don't think is an embarrassment. The defeat to Argentina was a real setback. And the wins over England were hardly convincing. And in Fiji, I just put an asterisk alongside and say, well, that's just nothing but a little money-making venture for Silver Lake partners. But, you know, this is a test. The Bledisloe Cup, as you know, well, Brett. I mean, New Zealand never want to lose that. And, look, I look at the TAB odds, our TAB, our betting agency here in New Zealand. I mean, they got Australia at 430. I mean, rank outsiders for this one. And I think that's probably about par for the course, to be honest with you. I talk about looking at superstars and New Zealand rugby right now, who we're naming. I look at that Australian side, Bretty. And you know me well, mate. I've always been on your side when it comes to the way New Zealand's treated Australia and how we need a strong ally next to us. And so it pains me to say this, but I can't see any cohesion in that Australian side. And I know Joe Schmidt. I have enormous respect for Joe, but kind of like Dave Rennie, that like he's getting into the weeds probably with these guys who just don't have an understanding of where the roots are. And that's really hard for a coach who's used to a system where you've got players who kind of get the fundamentals of the game and you can add an awful lot of detail. I would suggest that both Joe and Scott Robertson are in the same position right now, is they've had to actually go, fuck, I'm complicating this, and this is too complicated for the playing stock that I have. I need to pull back a little bit and maybe simplify what we're trying to achieve here. And, look, there's going to be some pain, I think, along the way for both of these coaches. But one is going to come out on top this weekend. I suspect it'll be the All Blacks, Brett, because there's nothing I've seen so far from Australia that makes me think that pound for pound you have a better team than New Zealand has right now.
Yeah, this almost seems like
I can't make a business case against
player advantages. And I've been thinking about Razor recently and trying to figure out 7 consecutive Super Rugby. How did he win? What was the Razor doctrine? Because now I'm looking at him now and it doesn't seem that different. He seems just kind of doing the same thing. And I wondered if it was just he had better players. He had more better players. And it was maybe we're looking for some art and some, game style, and doesn't really seem to be apparent. He wins when he has better players than he has more of them. 2 Crusader packs.
He also rifled through a lot of coaches, Harry. I can tell you the 2 tenants, and this goes back to Razor's 3rd year in charge of the Crusaders, 2nd or 3rd year. We sat down and I asked him that very thing. What are your tenets of coaching? And he said, I got 2. Turn up to work happy, and that was organisation wide. So Razor didn't just think about the football team and the coaching team. He thought about the organisation as a whole. He said, turn up to work happy. And the second tenet of his coaching was, excuse me while I try and rip my ear off. The second tenet of his coaching was whinge up.
Whinge up?
And I love this saying. And I said the same thing. What does that mean? He said, if you're a player and you've got a problem, never complain to someone lower down the pecking order of you, because they can't fix the problems. So if you're a mid-tier player and you're bitching about workload, don't go to a rookie and start bitching to the rookie, because he can't fix your problems. And the same goes for the women's game. She can't fix your problems. He said, you got to send that up the chart. You got to whinge up. So you got to go and see your captain. You got to complain. And if your captain can't fix it, the captain's got to go and see the manager. And if the manager can't fix it, the manager's got to come to me. And ultimately the buck stops with me. And I can fix it. And I really love that. It was really simple.
It's pretty good.
And it's pretty simple in a club environment. It's probably not so simple when you have the demands of international football and the scrutiny on you that he now is. I don't think Scott was naive going into the job, but there's one thing about understanding what's coming down the pipeline and facing it. But I still think that whinge up theory still holds true. If he can get this team to go, you know what, every complaint goes up the pipe until it hits someone who can fix it or dismiss it.
That's very interesting, though. Like Brett, that sounds like culture. Like the culture clubs, the clash of the culture clubs, because Joe Schmidt has a lot of those kind of things as well. But they're not about game style, or like we're going to be, penetrative, or we're going to be behind enemy lines, or we're going to have a rushed umbrella, or we're going to, like that. It seems more about happiness and team. I mean, like, do you see the same thing with Joe Schmidt?
Yeah, he's very much on this is going to hurt now, but it's better to hurt now than to be hurting in 12, 18, 24 months' time. So the pain that we feel now is so that we don't down the track.
Yeah.
That's what
tough
what it
love.
looks like. Yeah. And to a degree, Dave Rennie did something similar. And there's a similarity between how Dave Rennie came in 2020 and Joe Schmidt this year. They spent all of Super Rugby just sitting back and watching. They very deliberately, they went around to all the teams. They went around and they had coffees and lunches and chats with players, coaches, managers everywhere. But they very deliberately sat back and watched and observed and took notes. And it probably wasn't till the start of the next year that those conversations started being, if you start thinking about doing this with your line out, then that sort of helps the way we're trying to do things in July and August. And then you can have that conversation in 4 different locations now. And then by the time he gets them in July, they're a step or two ahead of what he got them this year.
But I think with Joe taking over from the Eddie fiasco, I mean, he can lose the Bledisloe and no one's going to call for his head. I don't know if Razor can lose the Bledisloe and not have some serious examination from the overlords.
No, Harry, it's a non-negotiable.
So let me come in here. One of the back when I was writing for the Raw, I wrote an article in Cricket Season and it got enormous response. And I wrote it very deliberately because I wanted to try and challenge people's thinking. And I simply wrote, it was simply called, "What if Sean Marsh succeeds?" And at the time, he was perennially being lampooned. And I just sort of said to people, what if he actually goes out and bats well in this test?
I remember the article, Brett.
And he did. And that's actually immaterial. So my question for you, Sumo, is what if the Wallabies win in Sydney this weekend? What's going to be the fallout, and are New Zealand prepared to think about that?
No. For starters, or to answer the last part of that question, no, they're not. The expectation this side of the Tasman, Brett, is that New Zealand wins this game. Secondly, to answer the first part of your question, the fallout will be severe. And, we might be at DEFCON 5 now because it's kind of like, let's be at the ready here. Things aren't quite going the way we foresaw. This will go to DEFCON 2 pretty quickly, if not DEFCON 1. And, heading into Wellington, and we all know the recent results in Wellington for the All Blacks. And you're thinking to yourself, should Australia one up in the series? I guess the bonus with the Bledisloe is that you've got to win both to win it. You only got to win one to retain it. And I guess that's the kind of short change nature of the Bledisloe Cup.
It's how the Wallabies held it
if Joe Schmidt, and he's more than capable of springing a surprise. Because, I'm assuming you've met Joe, Brett, and talked to him. I mean, I certainly have, and I have enormous respect for Joe, as I do for Scott. And against some of the preconceptions of our South African listeners, as I do for Rassie Erasmus. But, there's a really smart
He loves
guy.
you too.
Yeah, well, apparently he does. He messaged such. But they're really smart guys. And Joe also has that added benefit of having had time in the squad and time in the heads. And the one thing I would say about this All Black team, and the thing that I get off on these days more than, mate, what a first 5 did, and the running lines of a 7, I really get off on team culture. I spend a lot of time around high performing teams now, and I look at what they do and I try to understand the psychology around those teams. I don't see this All Black team as having their psychology right. I don't think they've found their groove in terms of their identity, and the All Blacks are an identity team. If you guys saw the headlines out of the Black Ferns, and albeit in a losing effort at Twickenham, but look at that team and what it stands for. Gratitude builds resilience. That team does a lot of community work. They're out there, they're hugging the king, for goodness sake. They're breaking protocol, but all in good nature. They turn up to Twickers. They rank outsiders. They're actually competitive. They bring a lot of joy to people. the All Blacks don't look like they're playing with joy at all. In fact, you have to understand what you're trying to do to play with joy. And so this is the chink in the armor that the Wallabies must expose if they're a chance here, because this is an All Black side in between identities. And those moments for opposition do not come around very often with All Black teams.
No.
We like to think of the All Blacks trajectory as a kind of linear path and they've spoken about this, right, and marketed this sort of, we're all on the thread and it's the rope that binds us together. And mate, whatever, if you want to buy that, buy it. But I just sense that we are at a particular point in All Black history where there is a weakness in the chain here. And the Springboks exposed it. Argentina exposed it, and if the Wallabies are smart, it's not just about the set piece and the line out and your strike plays and your transition defense. I think it's about exposing what looks to me like a genuine lack of belief in what this team stands for and what it's trying to do. And that, I'm a rank outsider looking in here. I don't have insight, but I've been around the game for a long time. I've seen the most successful All Black sides. This side isn't one of them right now.
Yeah.
No one can tell me it is.
Being in Cape Town, it was easier to get around the All Blacks in Cape Town than it was in Joburg because they were kind of, barricaded off. But around Cape Town, I ran into them plenty, had chats with them. At the game itself, I was low enough to see the different chatability of the two teams. Springboks were talking to each other, yelling to each other, positioning. Anyone could yell at someone. Like a young guy could yell at Andre Pollard, and it was okay. In the All Blacks, it seems still hierarchical, even on top of Table Mountain, running into Jason Ryan. Like players are not messing around with the coaches. Coaches are over here, players over here, senior players here, young players there. Almost like prefects and head boys and principals. And I wonder about that because you just said, Razor said happy teams win. It didn't look that happy to me on the field. I really never saw the Almost Black smile. I just saw Box jumping around and playing around. Even in the warm-ups, the warm-ups were different. The warm-ups were like regimented. Forwards play with forwards, backs with backs, do this, do that. Springboks running around. Rassie's kicking the ball. People are hugging each other, tapping each other.
Yeah, and winners are grinners too, right, Harry? I mean, and this team finds itself under pressure, but, like every good team finds itself under pressure from time to time. And if you can't fall back on results, what do you fall back on? You fall back on team culture. And the greatest teams in the world are the teams that say, right, we're going to have some adversity here, but we'll get through this because our culture is really strong. And I mean, I get a lot of lip service around those elements from the All Blacks, and they're all singing off the same song sheet. But, I look very intently now at body language and about people and about how a team is expressing itself. And, the All Blacks are playing with fear. And that's how it strikes me, at least. And look, I'm not an expert. I'm not saying
fear of making mistakes or what?
Fear of losing.
Fear of everything. Yeah,
and fear of everything. To Brett's point, and I dare say, Brett, and you're closer to them, far closer than I am. I think the Wallabies are a bit like that at the moment as well. They're trying to impress a new coach. They're trying to make their way. They're trying to be the guy in the team, and that we're dealing with alpha kids here, right? They all want to be. They want to be the superstar, the untouchable guy. But mate, if I look through that Wallabies team and I compared it with mate, who are you holding a candle to? No one in that team's holding a candle to Gregan, Larkham, Linefar, Jones, Finnegan, offing Galway, Eels. No one. Just the same way in the All Blacks right now, no one's holding a candle to Carter, McCaw, Whitelock, Retallick, Franks. No one. And so we're in a crazy generation of the game here right now in Australia and New Zealand, where you're like, who is going to put their hand up and actually say, hey, world, it's me? And
Tone Edmed.
Arno, as we're calling him now.
It might be time. Look, it's
the flip side of that argument is if 23 blokes are trying to put their head up and saying it's me, then you're not having team harmony at all because you've got too many guys trying to get noticed. So this is the confusing moment in time for the game. I would caution, though, And hubris is one of my favorite words. Things are going very, very well for the green and gold right now. But please don't think that just because things are going well right now, it's going to last forever. There are going to be stalwarts of that Springbok side who might get on the fade sooner rather than later. And all depth aside, when you take out some of the superstars of any great rugby team, it takes a while for others to fill those spots and to fill the vacuum left behind. And I think we're just at a point in Australian New Zealand rugby right now where we're trying to find nature's abhorrence for a vacuum personified in a player.
And it is a really interesting time. And it's interesting in that the same issues are starting to affect both sides of the Tasman. And so there is going to be a point where Phil Waugh and Mark Richardson say, you know what, we might have to explore a few things here. And that will be the point that everyone's been saying, we could have said this 15 years ago.
The problem with waiting is the options get worse. You should
start
exactly now.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. And that's the danger. That's the danger.
We touched on this, Brett. I mean, wouldn't you just love to see an open market in Super Rugby? Mate, if you're playing Super Rugby, all players are up for grabs.
Yeah, across the board.
Here's a salary cap. Find your squad.
It also makes players better, right? So you get a guy that doesn't shine well in this place, and then Tane goes to North Harbour, he lights it up. The same thing has happened in reverse. And sometimes if Rebels guy goes to the Queens of Reds, so have more markets, have 10, 11, 12 to choose from, and you're going to have better results.
If nothing else, it doubles the size of your options. Like, even if you want to try and close the borders around the competition, it doubles the size of your options. And there will be guys in New Zealand who don't quite fit, but they are going to star for the Force or the Brumbies. It doesn't matter who. Yeah. There's going to be benefits either way.
Yeah.
We could keep going on this for several hours more, mate, but you have a breakfast radio program.
I do.
Hook into in the morning, and we do need to let you go. It's been a fantastic chat, as it always was. I'm glad that the helmet wasn't needed for very long.
I've got it here just in case Harry wants
all good fun.
We're all good.
And by the way, the Springboks will be on top forever, but always the underdog. Just so you know.
Jesus Christ! See, this is what happened last time too. I knocked off my bloody computer. This is like we're reliving that. We're reliving history here.
It was your hubris. The hubris got you.
It's been great to catch up again, mate.
It's good to see you both, actually.
Cheers,
chat. And Harry, so you are going out to the Bledisloe. You'll be there.
I am. Yeah, I'll be in Sydney, and I'm still planning on what I'm going to wear when I meet Brett. It's kind of stressful.
Look, a thong and not much else, I think, is the go.
Yes.
Places he frequents. Hey, look, this is one thing we've never got to the bottom on this podcast, though. And I have listened. Harry, so you were in Cape Town?
I was in Cape Town.
You were in Cape Town. You're back in the States.
US, yeah.
You're going to Sydney this weekend.
Yes.
Accompanied
by a photographer and paparazzi.
Who do you launder money for? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I have many questions at this point, but it's a chat for another day. I'm hoping to get some answers this weekend. Mate,
love it,
fantastic chat. Good on you. Thanks so much for having a chat with us.
Awesome to see you guys. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you soon. This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones. And, mate, so good to have Sumo Stevenson back on, or not back on the 8-9 finally as well.
Sumo always delivers, and I like it that he doesn't hide behind anything. Like, obviously, he owned his comments about Rassie, but you got a better view of how he thinks about the innovative nature of the Erasmus regime. And as a contrast right now with his guy, who is probably a little bit underwhelming so far. So it all sets up for a delicious Bledisloe clash where both teams have so much to prove, because I think they are out of the honeymoon phase. I think both of them, with the loss in Argentina and the loss to Argentina, both of them exited the honeymoon, and it's the grind of the marriage.
Yeah, I feel like one honeymoon might last slightly longer than the other one. But I absolutely take your point. I think
Joe Schmidt has a different spouse than Razor does,
that's
right?
a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
That's a good way of putting it. So yeah. Look, it's going to be fascinating this weekend, and we'll get into it more in games of the week later in the week, because there was so many things about the game that we had intentions to talk with Sumo about, but we just got deeper on so many things, and it was such a better conversation anyway. So there's a lot to get into. Quick whip around the grounds. There's again there's not a massive amount of rugby being played around the world currently. The semi-finals of the Pacific Nations Cup were played in Tokyo on the weekend. Fiji beat the USA pretty comfortably. Japan did something similar, albeit much more high scoring, over Samoa as well. So Japan, Fiji will meet in the final in Osaka on Saturday. And Japan's just ticking along. They're actually playing some decent rugby. Fiji look like they're playing top tier football, and they just can't find the space to play it in at the moment. Which
for sure
makes their prolonged absence from the rugby championship.
And that was the good news. That was the good news for USA. They held Fiji to 22 points. And you would think that a lot of teams, Fiji will score points on you. So I'm just
absolutely. 22-3 is a good result for the US, no doubt. Round 2 of the top 14, no massive surprises there, except that maybe promoted Vanis, and I'm probably not saying that right, held Stade Francais won that 34-31. We talked about Stade last year. Yeah, man, they're in a funny sort of spot, aren't they? Lyon beat Bordeaux 28-26. Toulouse got up over La Rochelle, but as we talked about last year, La Rochelle don't get interested till January. So we'll see how that plays out. The NPC over the weekend, Tasman beat Wellington for a historic Ranfurly Shield defence. It's been a long time since the Ranfurly Shield's been the top of the South Island, and for them to hold on to it as they have done is absolutely fantastic. North Harbour had a big win over Manawatu, and we talked about Tane Edmund earlier. They're playing some good football at the moment. North Harbour, Currie Cup. I have to admit, I've not seen any scores this weekend. I'm going to. What do I need?
Well, as you know, my position is the Currie Cup is not being held this year, and it's fictitious. And all talks of it are fake. However, there was one of the most amazing matches of rugby in a year, which is when the Bulls and the Sharks ended up
40 all.
Regulation 33 all. Johan Goosen had a 52-meter from the middle of the field to kick to win it in normal time. Missed it, so you go to extra time. And in the end, it goes through 40 all. It goes through on tries scored. Trevor Nyakani scores a try at the depth, and that is the one more try that the Sharks needed, and they progressed on that rule.
Bulls missed a penalty on the 100th minute.
80 points scored, and Trevor Nyakani, a big jovial prop, is the winner.
Yeah, how good. So the Lions play the Sharks next weekend in the final.
Ringo is going to be happy, and he'll be there.
Yeah, very good. Games of the week and the test match postmortem are back this week, so make sure you like, follow, subscribe, all of that sort of stuff, and make sure you don't miss either of those as they drop later in the week. Test match postmortem will be interesting. It will be the first time in 3 years of podcasting together that we record in the same room.
Whoa.
What could possibly go wrong?
Mind-blowing.
Genuinely, I'm having to think about how we actually do this from a logistical point of view. So
I'll go on the other side of the press room.
It'll be something like that, but people don't have to worry about that. But just know that when we do that on Saturday night, we are literally in the same room. The biggest headlines of the last 7 days, mate, as Sumo touched on it, Premiership Rugby exploring the idea of a merger with the ERC that would unite clubs across the UK and Ireland. The Telegraph broke the story over there. Crucially, Italy and South Africa would not be invited. And the interesting part there is Italy are current ERC shareholders. South Africa don't become full partners till next year. So timing seems a bit interesting. And the ERC and the Premiership both owned by CVC Capital. So is this shareholders having a bit of a say in the background?
Well, the rise of the Irk is undeniably connected to the entry of the South African
Arrival of
teams.
South Africa, no doubt.
And I think Ireland in particular, but also Scottish teams know that very well. The problem is Wales. Wales is really suffering, and they look at the Irk almost as like, oh, we're suffering, and now we're suffering worse.
Yeah.
So,
we're still suffering.
I think Ireland is the key in this discussion. Whatever Ireland wants, they have some bully power right now.
And the Irish Union have already come out and said, we're pretty happy in the Irk, and we're happy to have conversations, but it's got to involve everyone.
But also, I think if you just read a little bit of Irish history and understand it, I think they're really enjoying being the ones that the English have to come to hat in hand.
It's my Ireland. It's my Ireland.
Please, sir, could we play with you? No.
Yeah, exactly. Super Rugby announced an extended 16-round regular season and a more competitive 16 final structure that was overly explained and was made all sorts of silliness around losing seeds and all that. All you need to know is that there'll be 6 teams, 3 winners will go through, and the highest ranked loser goes through the semi-final as well. That's all you need to know. And it was one of the most underwhelming announcements that we've seen. It'll start a week earlier than it has done in previous years. More Sunday games, no super round in 2025 was an interesting little takeaway as well. A final thought for me? What do you got?
Oh, I just want to get ready. I think I have to make sure I know which day is which day, and then arrive.
I'm sorry. I am sorry.
And start eating meat pies.
Yeah. You're promising me good. You're promising me really good pies. So I am.
I know a pie place in that area.
Good.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. So that then is episode 32 of the 8-9 done. Check the show notes for the links to the 8-9 combo on Twitter and YouTube, where you find video versions of the podcast every week. Leave us a rating or a review wherever you can. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure your notifications are turned on wherever they need to be. And on your pod platforms, make sure your auto downloads are set to on, and then you'll make sure you get it every time. Harry and I are in our usual places on the socials as well. You'll find Harry's written stuff on the Raw every week, and my weekly Australian columns on RugbyPass as well, although not this week coming, actually. And don't forget to head to rugbypass.tv, where you can now watch both series of Chasing the Sun, the documentary series celebrating South Africa's back-to-back Rugby World Cup wins in Japan and France. And we're so pleased that now everyone will be able to see Chasing the Sun too. It's a brilliant series, so make sure you sign up for free and watch it wherever you are in the rugby world, except South Africa. This is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones. And we'll be back in your ears in just a few days' time with another Rugby Championship edition of Games of the Week.
Come to the press conference with me, my first ever.
This is the 8-9 Combo Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones.